Here at Unfinished Business Television, we are proud affiliate partners of the website Super 7, the home of many famous, nostalgic action figures and apparel. If you could support the show, it would come a long way using the promo code AJEpics whenever you purchase anything in their store, and we love all of their amazing toys. So support Super 7 and please support Unfinished Business Television.
Okay, welcome back. This is part two of Unfinished Business Television. I'm your host, Jeff Galashaw, and with me, as always, is a writer from Collider and the proprietor of AJ Epics Production, Andre Joseph.
Feliz Navidad, El Gato en los Pantalones.
Okay, so let's get to part two of the show. And we start with your favorite part of the movies, trailers, or my favorite part, because most of you are coming in late from the refreshment stand during these. So let's get into it. We don't have that many trailers this week. Really, we only have three. And the first one is for the movie we have waited for and never thought was coming, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I think you know the cast. If not, it's Tom Cruise versus Esai Morales and AI. So, will this be the final, Mission Impossible movie for Tom Cruise? We'll see what the box office says. I'm looking forward to this, but I think I'm more looking forward to this movie to finish part one. We know it's going to be a Tom Cruise special effects stunt spectacular that we get every summer. So I'm glad, instead of another Top Gun movie this year, we're getting Mission Impossible. Will they kill off a character? Who knows? But I just want Ving Rhames to stop being his conscience and actually do some action this time around, and instead of being Ethan, calm down. He lost his lady in the last one. So, who knows what's going to happen in this film? Is he going to go no holds barred? Is he going to retire to Michelle Monaghan? Who knows? But we shall see. And, Andre, how are you feeling about this trailer? Does it get your excitement up for this finale, or does it just feel one and the same? And
it doesn't excite me. They're doing exactly what I predicted they were going to do when the last movie underperformed. They were going to promote this as this is going to be the last one. And yet Tom Cruise reportedly doesn't want it to be the last movie. He wants to keep going. But I think the studio and Brian Robbins are basically saying, you're 8 movies in, you're starting to show your age. Maybe it's time to move on. Maybe get Glenn Powell to replace you. Although that's just like fan speculation right now if there are fans. But the thing about it, you can see what they're trying to do by saying, well, what's going to make this so different from the last movie is that they're going to try to have these callbacks and tie-ins to events from the previous movies. So like they showed a knife from the vault scene because apparently the guy who had his coffee spiked and was taking a shit, he's supposed to be coming back in a significant role. So maybe the knock list is going to be part of the plot. And of course, the rabbit's foot from 3, which they never really explained what it was. We're going to probably find out what was the rabbit's foot. Maybe, and we see Angela Bassett comes back. Now she's part of the United States. We could see some other like MacGuffins come into play, like the Chimera virus from 2, or the maybe the bomb from Fallout. There's going to be something's going to go on. They're going to try to tie everything together, like this is Avengers Endgame, and make this like this is the most biggest mission ever, and he can either die and become disavowed or fake his death or whatever's going to go down. they're really trying to be desperate to show like this is a must-see movie. I don't know if it's enough because the thing with the bit planes that doesn't really excite me. Him in the ocean or like he's supposed to be swimming on a submarine. I like what? What's the big stunt that you're supposed to be doing here? It's supposed to make me pay to see this in IMAX. They're hoping it doesn't come out against another Barbieheimer level event, and that's the only way it's going to be safe. But I was there opening weekend for Dead Reckoning, and it didn't do enough money. There was basically nobody in the theater when I saw that. So I don't know if they're even going to be excited enough to want to see him do this again. This is not Top Gun. You're 8 movies in, dude. This is not like a sequel 30 years in the making. This is like from the last 2, 3 years from the last movie nobody really went out to see unless you live in Europe.
Tell us how you really feel, Andre. I have two comments. One is a rant, but I'm just going to go with my little petty comment. One, I say bring in Tandy Newton and then using your pitch, her assistant, Amelia Estevez, blinded, using a stick as a blast from the past. Like, I'll get you, Ethan. And I hope
I don't know if you'd be an assistant to a black lady, though.
Well, she could have learned, like once Ethan dumped her, she swore vengeance. And then this has all been part of Emilio's plan. So she has to guide him as his lover and as his hit woman or second in command, his Terry hat from the Bond movie.
He's the hidden brother of Eastside Morales. Nobody knows he's Hispanic.
Well, just like in life. So, and it brings it all back home. He was the one who hired Dougray Scott in part 2. He's the one who designed the rabbit foot. I don't know in part 4 what they did, so I'm not going to keep going.
The real leader of the syndicate.
He was a secret financer. See, I can keep going. It's like what part he played, all to ruin Ethan. He's the one who implanted Kerry Russell's character with that chip. Really, that gave her that weird eye movement when she died. Okay, but that's part 1.
I mean, how do we know big John Voight wasn't wearing a mask the whole movie?
It's okay. Well, that is the conservative side. But my rant is this isn't against Mission Impossible. It's films like Mission Impossible. I'm going to use the Scream franchise. I love these movies, but even I'm like somebody asked a question on social media of what franchise should have ended after part 2, and my answer was obviously Scream because 3 is horrible, and then 4 is decent, 5, and then 6. But now we're coming up with 7, where it's just like, okay, we had a plan for 7, but the producers decided to fire a key cast member, Melissa Barron. And then Jenna Ortega dropped out. And then as they were out, they lost their new director, Christopher Landon. So now they've had to rework everything and have to pay Neve Campbell a shitload of money to come back. And now I was just thinking that these characters in these movies lead shit lives because they can't ever rest because every fucking, moment is something from their past 20 years ago still striking them. And it's not even the same person. It's the legacy of that person. Think like, okay, Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. Like, okay, so this whole franchise has been Michael Myers trying to kill her or her offspring. So her whole life has been running from her deranged brother. And, even she had a child and had a granddaughter. And then she lived to see her son-in-law be murdered by him and her daughter be murdered, but her granddaughter gets to live. And my thing is, I know criminals don't have an end plan. What happens after Mike Myers kills the family? Does he kill himself, or does he just kill random people for no reason? What is the end plan? So why is there a cult of Ghostface killers? Rest in peace to the rapper. But why is there this Ghostface killer who's obsessed with Sydney? And they all are from Greensboro. You know, it's like, stop it. I understand you want to continue the series, but stop bringing back the stars. I'm happy for the stars to be working, but the same character, the same thing, it's the same. And even though I like watching Tom Cruise prove his masculinity in each of these movies, you get tired the same actor. It's like, I like Ethan Hunt. I understand it's our American James Bond, but really, like, I'm like Brian Robbins, except I don't know Dan Schneider. Where I'm just like, again, you want more of this? It's like, okay, we're gonna make Top Gun 3. What the fuck is it gonna be about? What does he have to challenge? Another new recruit? Or is this gonna be like Iron Eagle 2, where we kill Jason Gedrick? So now we get a new, protege. Sorry, spoilers for Iron Eagle 2 for all of you. But,
this is the other problem for me with Mission Impossible, which is the hook originally for me as a filmmaker and a fan was that each movie was going to be handled by a different director. So you had Brian De Palma, then John Woo, then J.J. Abrams, and then Brad Bird. Then you switch to Chris McQuarrie, whose only movie was The Way of the Gun. And supposedly they work so great together that Tom Cruise decided to break his rule and said, you know what? You could do the next one, and then the next one after that, and the next one after that. And granted, McQuarrie has tried to do little things to make his movies different from the next. He'll change the cinematographer, he'll change the composer, he'll do something to make it distinct. But those last four, it's like a friend of ours, Matt Murte, hello, had said about the last two Bad Boys movies. They feel like TV movies, right, without Michael Bay directing. And if you look at, I mean, I know you haven't seen every James Bond movie, Jeff, but all the ones in the 80s were directed by the same guy, John Glenn. And Eric Cohen could probably attest to this. But after a while, all those movies, like the Roger Moore films and the Timothy Dalton movies, all start to kind of look the same to where they felt like a TV movie rather than any particular director giving it their distinct style. So once he stuck with Chris McQuarrie for Mission Impossible, none of these movies felt unique or different or have a director putting their stamp on it. They tried to go after guys like Oliver Stone and David Fincher over the years, Joe Carnahan, who almost did the third one. And those guys would have brought something unique from a storyline perspective and from a visual perspective. But Chris McQuarrie just sticks with the same style in all the four movies he's done. And you have the same actors and maybe like an occasional new person that's added. And nothing feels fresh, nothing feels new. And it doesn't excite me. Like if you told me this new movie was going to be directed by Luca Branislav, yeah, him or John Watts or the Russo brothers, I might get excited. Or Jon Favreau, I might get excited because that's something different. They would give it a different style. But going with the same guy over and over, it gets boring and redundant.
Well, that's because, like, as you're saying, each film had its own personality before that. And now we have, let's face it, Tom Cruise likes control and people he knows. So he knows with Christopher McQuarrie, who is also, pretty much ghostwriter on all his projects, he can control. And maybe Tom Cruise still being sore after, his Fallen Angels episode that he directed didn't go anywhere, or he didn't get the acclaim he was hoping for. Maybe this is his way of being in control, but not seeming like he's in control. It's like, no, the director wanted this, and then his talent, Christopher, okay, I want this scene in here. I want this scene. Make me look manly. Don't show my neck. And stop trying to give me romantic interest. Like, let's focus on the action. And the ladies are only there, as my co-stars, as a means to an end. I'm still in love with Michelle Monaghan in these movies,
He's reminding me of Mark Harmon on NCIS. Like, if you see the guy in person, his face is getting very rubbery, but when you watch these movies, you can clearly see he's aging out.
Well, just like Mark Harmon, who's in control of the NCIS franchise.
Until he quit.
Hey, he still produces all of them.
He caused the creator to get fired by the network.
Well, maybe Donald Blassario was drinking too much on the job. He
created Quantum Leap. That's one of the greatest shows ever.
And he's
and Magnum PI.
And Mark Harmon is pissed that Scott Bakula is more beloved for Quantum Leap. He's like,
This
oh,
is true. He is
you
still
know,
he's a that dude is badass. Scott Bakula.
exactly. And you notice Scott Bakula has never lacked for work.
No.
Whereas Mark Harmon, this is all he got.
He could call Steven Soderbergh in 2 seconds. He'll give him a supporting part in the movie.
Hey, he was in The Informant, and
Yeah.
so I'm like, obviously we love Bakula on this show, so, but yeah, I'm just like, look, this is all. This is the last, other than now Top Gun. This is the last of his franchises left, and we know he's not going to do Legend 2. So
He wants a Days of Thunder too. I'm like, who the fuck wants to see that shit?
Tom Cruise.
Exactly.
But then again, who would have thought anybody would want to see Top Gun 2 besides him?
Is he gonna do the Firm 2 next?
Why not? Mitch, you're in trouble again with the well, you outlived Paul Sorvino, mobster. So,
and spoiler, Gary Busey's not dead.
Well, we know Holly Hunter isn't dead. I mean, you could probably get her now. But
yeah, she's affordable.
Triple Horn return, and
she's doing nothing. She'll take the money.
Well, Hackman's still there.
No, Tom will probably want a younger love interest, though.
Will he? Because now for Tom Cruise love interest, you can be in your 50s.
Not unless you're Kelly McGillis.
I mean, hey, Jennifer Connelly's, she's kind of up. It'll be Marissa Tomei.
They should do a movie together.
Well, it's not going to be June Squibb. That's the movie I wanted. I'm just romancing June Squibb. There's your romantic comedy. That's the Shallow Hal 2. That I'm waiting. But let's move on because we talked about Mission Impossible for a shockingly long time. Next, Better Man, which is singer Robbie Williams' biofilm told through him being a monkey. I applaud this trailer because it's something different and unique and interesting, which unfortunately has never been Robbie Williams' career. He was basically a British star, former boy band member who had some singles and was more popular overseas than he ever was in America. I mean, I remember the music video for the remake of the song Something Stupid with him and Nicole Kidman. I like that. And he had a single called Rock DJ where he used a sample of a soul singer song. And in the video, he has all these women rating him, and he's like, keeps stripping until finally he starts taking off his skin. So basically, I've always remembered Robbie Williams videos more than the song. So I think this is more of the same, but I'm intrigued to watch this movie on streaming. Andre, what did you think of Robbie Williams' Better Man trailer?
So full disclosure, I never heard of any of Robbie Williams' music. Like I've seen like interviews and things with him. Sometimes I got him mixed up with Dougray Scott because they look a lot alike. So he wasn't one of those guys that was really on my radar like that. But I will say I like the concept because I've always said like some of these biopics for musicians tend to run the same beats and don't do anything new. This one at least looks like it's having fun telling his story, kind of like with the Pharrell Lego movie, to be able to tell it, but from the perspective of him as a monkey. And so it could be like unusual and unordinary and just something different. No, I'm with you. I probably won't pay to see this in the theater, but I would be curious to see it on streaming when it comes out.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if also it's supposed to be like he's trying to relate his show business career to being a dancing monkey. And
yeah,
because also to us in the States, it's sort of like Rita Ora, you've seen her host shows and everywhere. You might have heard a little of her music, like her single where she sung with what is her name? Iggy Azalea. And now she's known for being married to Takia Waititi. But realistically, it was more like she was kind of pushed from entertainment onto, I guess, American crowd, so to speak. Like she's more famous for being famous than what her supposed talent is supposed to be. And that's what it felt like. Robbie Williams was like an early version. Because again, he was popular in Europe, but for those of us in the States, we just know, oh, he was on a memorable episode of MTV Cribs. Even though you didn't know who the hell he was. So he's kind of like Takashi 69 with TMZ. Like they always talk about these rappers who you've never heard from, and the only place you hear of them is in gossip shows, rather than actually hearing any of their music. So they're more infamous than famous. And for our final trailer, we will be talking about a film I've been waiting for to come out for quite a while, Den of Thieves Pantera, which again has Gerard Butler tracking down O'Shea Jackson Jr. from the first film. And instead of busting him, wanting to actually join his crew and I guess take down their next big robbery and get paid, though we are left to wonder, is this just him being undercover trying to get revenge on him? Or is he really a full-fledged member of this gang? Now, my thing is, I really love Den of Thieves. That was one of those movies that came out of nowhere. And you think, oh, it's going to be a typical Gerard Butler movie with more recognizable actors, and actually ended up being more closer to Heat than any other film out there. It has, the action sequences, it has the character work, it's more of an ensemble, and it offers a twist at the end. The problem is, how do you top that with the sequel? Because you need all those same elements. And since we never got Heat 2, but now the film has to trust itself on its own of what's it going to do. Is this going to be a buddy kind of Fast and Furious type sequel, where it's like, oh, two enemies coming together against a common enemy, and even though they can't trust each other? And will there be a twist? But I'm having faith in this movie, even though now it's more on the shoulders of O'Shea Jackson Jr. and Gerard Butler. There's no distraction with 50 Cent or Pablo Schreiber, or the gorgeous ladies who play their wives. No, not as much, I would say, exploitation. But I'm really looking forward to this movie, so I definitely will be seeing this in theaters. What did you think of the trailer?
Well, like you, I was surprised with Den of Thieves because I thought it was just going to be one of those knockoffs, and Gerard Butler not really being all with hits these days. But that one actually did surprise me with how well it was done, and I knew a sequel was coming for some time. What's interesting about the premise and the idea that I guess he and O'Shea Jackson are going to have to work together, that was actually an idea considered for that New Jack City sequel that never got made, because Ice-T recently did a podcast and revealed that the plot was going to actually begin with Wesley Snipes' character waking up in the hospital, and the government now wants to use him to go after the actual people that are supplying the crack to the streets. And as part of that condition, I guess get his charges cleared, he would have to work with Ice-T's character to find these guys. So it would be like, will they get along? Will they not get along? So I think they're taking that idea and they're applying it here with Gerard Butler and O'Shea Jackson. So that has me very curious. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit hard to top because you're going in that direction versus, here's your cops, here's your villains. There's a big heist about to be pulled off. We have to just wait and see.
Well, I would have liked to see Wesley Snipes in this, because he wouldn't have been bad in that to fill out the ensemble.
Yeah.
I don't know which role, but I'm just saying. So that is trailers. And now we get to the thing you've all probably been, if you sat through part 1, you've been waiting for. Part 2, we're going to go into our movie reviews, where we will be talking about 6 recent releases. Don't worry, there's no blast from the past from 2 years ago that we finally got around to, like Bones and all last episode. So the first film we're going to talk about is Transformers 1, which is a movie that explores the origin of Optimus Prime and who's the villain? Megatron as young men who were best of buddies until, I didn't know what to expect from this film, because realistically, I didn't really do my research at first. I saw the trailer and I was just like, oh, another Transformers movie. So I didn't even know it was an origin story. So imagine my surprise watching the film and I'm like, oh my God, this is actually kind of deep, and you know, I don't think it needed celebrity voices, but considering the last time there was a Transformer animated film, we had celebrity voices at the time in it. So I'm like, no Orson Welles in this, but you do get Lawrence Fishburne. So we have Chris Hemsworth, Brian Tyree Henry, Scarlett Johansson, of course, Keegan Michael Key, Steve Buscemi, John Hamm, and James Remar. And they all play characters you kind of would expect them to play, like Keegan Michael Key's more the comic relief. Steve Buscemi is the early version of Starscream and how he got his voice. John Hamm is kind of the false hero of the thing. And I was surprised at how good quality, not only being a animated Transformers fan, but just from a film aspect of animation, it was really good. It was just as kind of violent as the first film, but not as much heartbreaking death as the previous movie. But I would say if you are a fan of Transformers, not the Michael Bay version, but maybe some of them, but if you are a diehard Transformers fan, I think you should give the film a chance because I was surprised at how much I actually enjoyed it and how much it stayed with me. Andre, what did you think of Transformers One? And
Well, I remember when I first saw Bumblebee, and I said to people, the first 3 minutes of that movie were like the best 3 minutes of any Transformers live action movie that I'd seen because it had the Autobots and the Decepticons in the front and center, exactly the way people wanted to see them in live action, having their famous battles like you saw in the cartoon, and none of those human characters that annoy the shit out of people. And obviously going the animated route, all 3D, of course, was the right way to go in telling that story because those are the characters everybody relates to. And trying to always inject Shia LaBeouf or Mark Wahlberg or actors playing the military just distracts from what people got into Transformers to begin with. So going into this, I heard all these great reviews, and I just felt like the marketing really wasn't selling on whatever this movie was supposed to do. I don't want to get more into that in a moment, but I think hands down, not only does this surpass any live action Transformers movie, I think this is the best one since the 1986 film. And the reason I say that is because, yes, you still have humor, but it's more in line with the original cartoon. There is depth, there is drama, and the relationship between Optimus Prime as his original identity, Orion Pax, and Megatron when he was, I think, D16 or D17, you believe it. You believe that these two guys had a same, like, kind of this bond, this belief that they were more than what they need, than the way society treated them as. And Sentinel being that false hero that made everybody think like he was this great man, but then he really was, like a lot of today's politicians, just a lying piece of shit that's just basically saying anything to get people to believe them. And just the way that it ends up going, like once they find out the truth, and it's like Prime knows we got to free the people. Megatron just wants blood. He wants revenge. And the fact that it goes as dark and as deep as it gets, especially the fight scene with him and Starscream, and he nearly takes him out the way he did in the 86 movie. That was like a holy shit moment. So I just love the way that it builds. You not have to wait 3 movies to get to that point. Everything is all done in one, and it's a concise plot that starts really light and then goes into this dark place that really is definitive Transformers to me. And that's why I think more people should see this and embrace it because let's be honest, these trailers did no justice to this movie at all. I feel like Paramount took what they thought was successful for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, and they thought if they just made it fun and poppy, that was what was going to bring people in. No, this right here, if you made them say this is going to be like that original movie and the cartoon you grew up with, I guarantee it would have done a lot better. And that was the true shame of this film. Nothing's wrong with it. I think Josh Cooley, who had done Toy Story 4, did an excellent job in paying homage to the original cartoon and the lore of Transformers that everybody knows. Because not everyone knows that origin story beyond what the live action movies tell you, because they tried to convolute that with tying it with events of world history like the moon landing or a folktale like King Arthur's sword Excalibur. And it just got so convoluted that it made a whole mess of this franchise. Even the last two movies, Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast, which were better than the Michael Bay films,
Yeah.
still convoluted with the timeline. Here it was pretty straightforward and enough depth with the characters that you were just into it. And you got your Easter eggs, but they don't hammer you over the head with them. So for that, I give this movie a high recommendation, not just for Transformers fans, but just anybody who loves animated movies.
I give it a high recommendation. Like I said, I didn't expect to even watch this, but I gave it a chance, and I'm so glad I did because as a person who grew up watching Transformers, I saw the first Transformers movie in theaters and remember how heartbreaking it, but how impactful that film was. And this feels like the true follow up, even though it's a prequel. I had all those same feelings watching this film. Obviously not as sad, but just as dramatic and just as I guess like it brings you in. Like even if it's been a while, you're right back to that conflict and remembering, all of these memories of watching the episodes as a kid. And, it helps that there's no human element. So you're watching them in their element, on their home planet, you know. So, and it speaks of like, kind of modern day politics also. But it doesn't get heavy handed there. And,
Right.
and Lawrence Fishburne, perfectly cast, I like the cast though. I'm like, why the brother got to be the bad guy though? you know.
Yeah.
But like you said, at least you credited like Bumblebee. I didn't see the other live action one. That was more recent with Anthony Ramos, but I do remember Bumblebee being the only live action version of any of these films that I've actually enjoyed watching. So I would always just say, if you're going to watch these two animated films first, and then if you must see live action, just watch Bumblebee for me until I see the Anthony Ramos one. But I give it a high recommendation. I think it's perfect, maybe for families, for older children, not like little kids. It might be a little like, wait,
Yeah.
what? But I think, and it's on streaming just in time for the holidays. There's another movie that could have came out like this month and probably had better chances at the box office. That
Oh, would
when
have done much better now.
exactly than releasing it in the middle of the summer, basically dumping it. So that is a high recommendation for Transformers One on streaming right now. Definitely check it out. I believe it's on Paramount Plus
Yes.
if you have that channel. Then next we go to Kevin Smith's The 430 movie. He's made, this film independently produced, made at his theater in New Jersey, and has a bunch of cameos. It's basically set in the 80s, a teenage kind of love story and friendship about a boy who asks a girl to go to the movies. And before she can get off and come to the theater, him and his buddies decide to go to the neighborhood movie theater, kill time, watch a bunch of movies till then, until they get banned through mixed series of events and them trying to get back into said theater. Now, again, this movie has loads of cameos from like Jason Lee, Rachel Dratch, Rosario Dawson, Justin Long, and King Jung, who plays
And
kind of
Jung, yeah.
plays the villain of the movie. And I understand the vibe he was going for because this also feels a little autobiographical for him, especially with the ending. But and he seems to be trying to cater to younger audiences. And obviously, this movie was done to help, his theater, which, is struggling, but still open. And I can admire him for all that. But it reminds me of something that unfortunately, and understand, I am a huge Kevin Smith fan growing up. He was an inspiration. He's one of the people who made me want to make films, and still I feel like he's a hope in the industry. But I also felt like watching this film, it's a nostalgic look, but it doesn't have anything to say. And that is the main problem with the movie. It's like, why should I care about these characters? Like, even the hijinks that happen aren't that funny. Like, for instance, the toilet scene where the
Mm.
guy is reading the thing and taking a shit. Why would, just because you saw it on a wall, you start masturbating? Like, stuff like that made no sense. I thought, the Tony Danza stand-in, who had his best friend, when he went off with the girl, it was going to be maybe an oral sex joke. How are they having sex in a theater? you know, little things like that. And the cameos feel useless. I'm glad they all came out to be in this film, but was Justin Long really needed in this film? For instance, was Rosario Dawson really needed for that one scene? Was Jason Lee, who I'm happy to see on the big screen, did he really need to be there for just one
Right.
scene? It's like, if you're going to have them, at least have them do a little bit more, be a little more tied into the story, And also, not to insult the lead actor, but again, he doesn't really make you root for him as a lead character. There is no charisma to him. Obviously the film is for us young people who, or well, young people. I'm not that young anymore, but those people who want to go to film school and film fans. Didn't need the shock look when I said young. It's Andre. But for those film fans who may feel like outcasts, that there is, hope that you can go out there, get out of your small town and make films. So I appreciate the inspiration. But other than that, I mean, it was nice to see Genesis Rodriguez, King Jong. But other than that, really, was it this really the film that need to be made? I want to believe in it. I want to have hope in it, but if I gave it a recommendation, it's a mild recommendation for Kevin Smith purists and completists more than anything. And I really wanted to like this film, but even like when he did the spoof trailers, they weren't that inventive or that funny. I expected, maybe I just have too high expectations from him since I'm an early fan. So like I said, I give it a mild recommendation. But if you're not into Kevin Smith movies, this isn't the one that's going to convince you to come there. Andre, what did you think of the 4:30 movie?
Initially I wanted to like it because it was one of those nostalgia trips. I knew what he was trying to do. He was trying to get the feel of a John Hughes movie, the feel of these 80s sex romps, and to do it in a very semi-autobiographical way. But yeah, the jokes, they don't really land. The cameos are kind of pointless. Ken Jeong was probably the only real standout among any like name people that were in it, but the rest of them, it's like they were playing parts they really didn't need to be there for. And then there's also like all these self-referential jokes that are like all these wink wink moments, like, oh, we shouldn't have more Star Wars movies. Oh, Bill Cosby, he's a great American. And they're like, no, this is not playing well, dude. This is like, you think you're clever, but what was clever for you when you did Clerks and Chasing Amy and Mallrats is not clever anymore. It's not funny. And yeah, just nobody's really relatable. Maybe again, the lead girl is probably the only real
Yeah.
standout of the young actors. But otherwise, it felt like a very cheap movie to me to make, only because she shot in this theater. But in general, feels like lower quality than even some of the more upscale, like a Jersey Girl type of film, where you could tell he put in money to make that look very cinematic. Here it just looks like anything that we would have done on a small budget and just got our friends together with, which is like a huge step down for him. So I give it no recommendation, dude. I,
Damn.
I just am like, Kevin Smith, I respect him. I'm a fan. I would love to meet him, but this one didn't work for me, brother.
I think I'm a little nicer to this film, maybe because again, I still believe in him, and I believe he still has good films in him. I think it would have helped if before he made Mallrats, like if this was his second film, because then
Yeah.
it could have explained why we needed one location, you know. And if he got any celebrities to be in it, it would have been a miracle just off of Clerks. But you know, at this late stage in the career, it's supposed to be getting better and have more things to say rather than the reverse, which is the way it feels like his films are going. It also maybe feels like maybe this was something he wrote originally for his daughter to star in as the female lead, and then obviously she grew up, so it's like, oh, she can't play a teenage girl anymore. So, but while I have the script around, let me make it, because like you said, the only out of the young actors who stands out is the girl playing the female lead. And also, I think Genesis Rodriguez again shows she should work more in better films after watching this film, because she makes what is basically a bit role, at least she makes it memorable. Whereas somebody like Adam Pally seems only to be here to fulfill a role in the costume as a goth usher. That really serves no plot, you know. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, that is our review of the 4:30 movie. Kevin Smith, please come on the show. We'll be fair. Uh,
Oh yeah.
uh, Next, we're going to talk about the surprise hit movie Smile 2. This one is directed by Parker Finn and stars the beautiful Naomi Scott. This is a sequel to the original movie Smile, and shows how it continues on to this pop star through the only returning cast member from the first film and that character's fate. Don't want to spoil it, but yeah, you know, I think you guys know who it is. And I'm going to admit now, I was already on the fence about this movie when I saw the trailer. I think seeing the trailer for Smile 2 finally convinced me to see Smile. And Smile, as we discussed on the last show, was such a surprise. But I didn't see this in theaters, and at this point, I am so disappointed I didn't, because I really enjoyed this film more than I probably should have. It's not only Naomi Scott, who I'm a fan of from like Aladdin, a bunch of Elizabeth Banks movies called the Power Rangers movie, and the Charlie's Angels reboot. But she was always memorable, at least in those two movies, even if the quality wasn't. And it taught her a lesson to stay away from Elizabeth Banks. But here, you know, she finally gets to play a lead, even if it is a sequel, but she truly stands out. This movie is so beautifully filmed. I like the takes, I like the jump scares, because it's a studio horror film that has its little flashes of trying to be artistic, even though basically it's a mashup of really of It Follows and The Ring. You know, put those together, you have this movie. But I thought that this film, if it's going to be a studio movie, you know, this is the type. This is how you do horror, and you can be grisly, but also, you know, kind of catch the audience's interest with like this pop star lifestyle. You know, it knocks Trap out of the water. You know, the only part of the film that becomes truly disappointing is the third act, and that's because instead of flashes of violence, this is when we're gonna go full CGI moments where you can tell, like, okay, this is digital. This isn't practical effects anymore, and that's the only the film's weakness. I like the third act. I think the ending could have been a little bit stronger, but I like that the writer director obviously has interest in world building, because this film now opens it up a little bigger for I guess a whole global stage, sort of, by putting a pop singer in the middle of it. And you know, kind of like Trap, the singles kind of slap from you know, her characters. You know, I'm trying to think what else can I say about this film, because this is out of all the films, this is the most recent I've seen, and so it's still fresh on my mind. But like the car crash scene alone, that is like virtuoso filmmaking, and the opening scene is, you know, because it feels like a different movie almost as it passes from that first scene to the rest of the movie, but it still stays so strong. And so I give this, I'm not going to say high recommendation. I'm going to give it a recommendation. I think you should see Smile first, but I'm looking forward to Smile 3. And I felt like the ending, like I said, could have been a little tighter than it ends up being, but it is still well thought out. Andre, what did you feel or think about Smile 2? Mm.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The lead actress is very gorgeous, and I didn't know she was half Indian. So if you told me she was in Aladdin, I wouldn't know because I was just pretty blown away by her. But in general, too, like I think it kind of did step up a lot of things from the first one with some of the scares and the violence. And yes, the cinematography is superb, especially the one scene in the apartment where you have like all the group of groupies
Hmm.
all pretty much just like moving from room to room, side to side. I mean, that had to be some of the best stunt dance people that they could get to really pull that off, and I thought that was so well executed. And yeah, I got my issues with the third act and the strange weirdo that knows everything. Even more weirded out that the ending takes place where I live in Staten Island and looks nothing like Staten Island unless it's like all the way out at the end of Arthur Kill Road. Like I wouldn't even know where that is. Like, why are you gonna come out here for this shit? Um, but I did like the fact that yeah, it's better than Trap because it's dealing with the pop world and making her like have that history where she's a drug addict and they're trying to like clean up her act, but then you're seeing her like go through all of these moments where she can obviously see this shit and then everybody else thinks she's just freaking out and high, and how that really makes things kind of crazy. And I liked Rosemary Witt as the mother too, like the showbiz mom, and you know you're not sure she's alive or dead. Like there's that whole little twist there. So some pretty shocking moments. I give it, not a mild rating. I just give a regular recommendation. And yeah, definitely, I think the way that it ends, I think it's gonna probably even go even bigger now that everybody kind of witnessed what she does at the end and how that's gonna end up spreading all over, not just New York, probably the rest of the country and how that gets dealt with. Hopefully it's not going to be like a Civil War type of movie, just kind of keep the quality intact. But yeah, this was a good one.
um, I thought the way something happens at the end could have been more graphic, especially
Mm,
going by the sound that they were showing us.
yeah.
The final product not that believable. Like I said, I think it's obvious the director. I remember a news story of saying that he wanted to remake Possession. And watching this film, I don't know if this was his version of Possession or if this was like his audition reel for it to show what he was going to try and attempt with that. But I'm like, it's a good film, but it's sort of like it's a good Hollywood film. And is it so good because you already had your expectations low, or is it just really a good film? So you sit there and wonder. Either way, I think anybody who likes Smile 1 will really enjoy this film. And even if you didn't see Smile 1 and don't understand what the whole thing is going on, I think you'll enjoy the movie. So that is Smile 2. Next, we're getting because we're getting into the more controversial movie. We're going to take a look at Blink Twice, aka Pussy Island, under its original title. Directed by Zoe Kravitz and written by Zoe Kravitz with E.T. Feigenbaum, who is a male. This film, okay, spoiler alerts, because there's no way to describe it without spoiling it. This is a film where a woman wants to meet this multi-millionaire or billionaire influencer, and she ends up meeting him, and her best friend get flown to his island to hang out with his friends. But as it goes along, people are wondering where they're getting these mysterious bruises from. And then her friend just disappears, but yet nobody remembers her. And then slowly all is revealed as the movie goes along. This movie, it's a mixed bag. it's kind of like Get Out, or that's kind of the message and heaviness it wants to uh, uh put out there, because obviously, like, based on people like Jeffrey Epstein, maybe Elon Musk, as Andre pointed out in a previous conversation we had about this film. But, guys who basically in the public want to seem like, oh, I'm doing everything for the greater good, but behind closed doors are still abusing, raping innocent young women, and setting it up for their fellow friends to in their debaucherous behavior. My problem with the film overall, I can tell it's the first film. It's like this might have been handled better by a more experienced director. Um, and also, having an all-star cast is distracting. But the film, for all its points, has its own issues because, like, they try to portray all the males as evil, but let's say the character portrayed by, I don't know his name, but Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's son, who plays like one of the younger males in the film, his character is obviously being abused by the men too. And in the flashbacks, we see he's the one trying to keep them from raping all the women. But I thought it could have been more powerful that, you can also have abusive gays, Kevin Spacey, in
Mm.
the media, and also there are male victims. I thought that could have been like a stronger thing in the film instead of just man evil, women. Maybe have one of the women other than, again, this is heavy spoiler, Gina Davis being part of, the only female, accomplice. But my thing, one of the biggest problems of the film is the ending. Like it has this justified ending, like we got revenge, but it's also kind of like has the lead character sell out instead of seeking revenge against the man who you remember literally killing your friend. You're just gonna have him be in servitude to you for the rest of your life. So you kind of sold everybody else out for this. And while that works as a kind of anti-hero as a lead, it kind of kills the message that you're also trying to put out there. Again, this is my interpretation of it. I'd love to have Zoe Kravitz on it and discuss this film. But also, you have, I don't know, Channing Tatum, who you were dating at the time, plays the lead and probably helped get the financing due to his casting. And he is ultimately the villain, but also I don't know, the hair dye job that it's so bad that it's distracting. That reminds me of Bruce Willis in Die Hard 3, where it's like, this is supposed to be red, and I don't know if this was supposed to try and make him look older or younger. And I would like, again, while I love Channing Tatum and I find it brave that he took this role, um, I don't know if he was cast correctly, And one of my favorite additions to this film was Gina Davis being in it out of nowhere. So happy she's there. But my man Christian Slater is in this movie, but you don't give him anything to really do. It's like, is he trying to like reprise that kind of character from Very Bad Things by being in this? And like, I'm glad Simon Rex is it. I guess I was looking to kind of round out like the characters. Like, we barely know what they do. And why does the fat guy played by Joey Osment have to be the first victim? I'm happy, that this is apparently, as you would say, a woke movie, because I'm glad to see people of all colors on this island. But of course, all the people of color are victims. And Aaliyah Shawkat, who is excellent, but she's not given anything to really do. She's the most relatable character because she's the most human character. Everybody else kind of feels like a stereotype, or a caricature more. Like, oh, here's the reality show contestant who wants to be, get in tight with him so she can extend her career. Here's the mindless young girls who are just here as their friends, and, I just thought, for what you're attempting, this should have been stronger. I don't think it's a bad movie, and I think it opens up conversation. But I'm interested in seeing what Zoe Kravitz's next film will be, and I think maybe by then she'll have a stronger voice or a stronger hold on the material. But I would give it a mild recommendation for the issues and things it brings up. And it's not a bad film. It's just all over the place. So I'd give it a mild recommendation. What do you think of Blink Twice, Andre?
Same as you, kind of a mixed bag between the messaging and the overall narrative. I feel like what it was trying to say was taking a little too long to get there. Like once it all kind of came around and made sense by the third act, I feel like you probably could have really addressed what was going on maybe hour into the movie. So that was one of the issues I had. And yeah, it was essentially Jeffrey Epstein, Elon Musk, and Bill Cosby all wrapped up into one with Channing Tatum and company with what they were doing with the girls. Yeah, everything that you said, I give it a mild recommendation, but I will say I think Zoe Kravitz does has talent as a director, and I
Yeah.
would like to see more of what she can do. I think this script just needed another polish. That's the only issue because everything else is there and it's timely. And performance wise, it's not bad. Naomi Aki is fine as the heroine next to Tatum. And I like having Christian Slater there as sort of like the background villain and Gina Davis also in a very subverted part. But even like some of the other girls that were being tortured and being sexually aroused and all they all felt interchangeable to me. There really weren't too many of them that I felt like they were distinct from one another, and that was the other issue that I had with it.
I also felt like, okay, if you're going to include the island people, you could humanize them a little bit
Yeah,
more,
that was the
or
other issue.
yeah, like explain why they're there. I thought that was missing. Like they work for him, but obviously they're trying to warn the women by giving that with the venom that they snake venom
Yeah.
to wake them up. But like I agree. Like I said, I think Zoe Kravitz does have talent as a director. I just felt like this and Civil War are films that are great conversation starters, but don't quite stick to their intention of what they should have been. And
Right.
but I will say, definitely watch this, especially for you young liberals out there,
Mm.
because I think it's going to lead to discussions that should be had and issues. I'm sure Donald Trump will hate and the Conservative Party. Next
And Matt
we
Gates.
is yeah, those see, there's so much stuff I want to say, but I'm not going to. We're a movie review show. So speaking of race, let's talk about Alien Romulus, the latest in the Alien franchise, directed by Fede Alvarez. This film, I'm trying to figure out how to talk about this plot. It deals with a bunch of settlers who are trying to get from working on this one planet where you're required to stay for however long before you're allowed to move on to another planet. They want to escape and basically live their lives free. And our main character, Rain, has a android brother named Andy, played by David Johnson, the true scene stealer of this film, and she ends up going with an ex-boyfriend on this spaceship, and his brother just prejudiced against androids. Mm-hmm. Uh, you know,
It's a Disney movie.
and they go and they find a ship that sends a distress signal. They go on the ship, and I think you all can guess the rest. Um, Look, I understand this film had a lower budget than the usual Alien film because this, for the most part, plays like a slasher. Like, but without many great kills. Because you already have a limited number of characters, and realistically, half the cast you don't care about. Like you don't care about Tyler, and you really don't care about his brother, which might be why he gets one of the more violent deaths. But you kind of have their sister who you feel sorry for and who's pregnant, and that just felt like an excuse for that third act monster. The Asian girl who's the pilot was kind of disposable. And realistically, if I didn't know from looking it up, I would not have recognized Callie Spaney as the lead character. So, she's not a final girl to remember, but she stands in the tradition of leading female characters in the franchise, though Catherine Waterston is way more memorable than she is in, her, what was that Alien? What was the second?
Covenant.
Yeah, she was more memorable in that film than Callie Spenny's. And again, this is David Johnson's movie because he goes from being picked upon to getting back at his bullies to a certain extent, but he's really the heart of the film, even though he's playing an android. And I know this part Andre really wants to talk about the return of a past character in this film as a villain is both inventive but also a little insulting. But it gives the film a way to tie to the rest of the series. I'm interested where this could have gone with a bigger budget. I would give it again. I'm going to recommend it, but it's more for David Johnson, and that's the only reason I'm giving it. Because again, it feels like another Alien sequel that's better than some of the other spinoffs, but it doesn't feel as inspired as any of them. There was nothing where it's like this needs to be made. But David Johnson, he's the one that act or his character is what makes this film worth telling. And I'm interested to see him play Sammy Davis Jr. in a future film. And Andre, I know you want to unleash on it. What did you think of Alien Romulus?
I wanted to go in thinking this was going to do for Alien what Prey did for Predator, to kind of give it a fresh restart and something new, get away from Ridley Scott. Um, to be fair, yeah, I think, like you said, it is better than some of the other Alien sequels that we've gotten. At least you can see Fede Alvarez puts in the effort to pay homage to the original movie, but also have those nods to the Cameron movie down to the action sequences. But yeah, there's so many issues. I mean, obviously with the alien stuff and the face huggers and the eggs, nothing really new is being done here that we haven't seen before. It's pretty much, if you've seen one alien movie, you've seen them all. So it doesn't really add anything new there. And I agree, none of the characters except for the black android, David Johnson, I didn't care for anybody. And half the time I kept thinking, this is Disney. They want to go racist with these white folks beating down on this black android dude that's like always nice and trying to tell bad jokes. Half the time he looks so sad, like you want to hug him and tell him it's going to be okay. But that's no knock on the actor or the character. I think that just makes him very sympathetic. And if that was the accomplishment, they did just that. And yeah, the Ian Holm bringing back Ash with his half-fast dead body, that was creepy as fuck. I'm sorry to say. I read about it before I saw the movie that they were doing this, so I was very curious. I would have preferred they just dig up the old dummy cast of him and just use that instead of CGI, because CGI just looked fucking weird as hell. It looked like it was something made out of AI and then trying to recreate his voice. He's rolling in his grave with that shit. It's something I wouldn't have done. I would have probably preferred just I know it was Alien takes place years and years after this. I would have preferred get Lance Hendrickson back as Bishop, and maybe he could have been created and he runs around with these guys. Maybe develops a friendship with the black one. Because yeah, trying to bring back Ian Hall was like, ugh, no, probably would have preferred 90-year-old Tom Skerritt. Turns out he's not dead this whole time. he's been hiding
he's retired. But
he's been hiding in the elevator shaft for 70 years or some crazy.
And he'd be like, and he still looks good.
Still looks good. Sweet man, Tom Skerritt. Yeah, mild recommendation for me. I don't think it was terrible, but I think Alien 1 and 2 for me, and maybe Prometheus to some extent.
Yes, no, I agree with that. I think this is a fine popcorn movie. As long as you go into
Yeah.
it not expecting much, you'll find it enjoyable. Though I wonder, why are the two like the crew of this other ship, why are the two leads white and their sister's Hispanic?
Why are they racist?
And when you have a Hispanic sister,
Right.
maybe it was something of modern times. Dun dun dun. But either way, that was
Well, look
Alien
at Britain's future.
Exactly. Even in the future, it's still messed up. And now, for our final movie, we are going to review one of the best reviewed movies of the year, Anora, written and directed by Sean Baker and starring Mikey Madison. Truth be told, me and Andre both saw this film together at Alamo Draft House. Anora is about a girl who's a stripper and meets this young Russian billionaire. Well, he's the son of Russian billionaires. Well, at first wants a private dance, then wants her to come over. And of course, he pays for her services. And I guess on a whim, since he's spending all his time with her, he proposes to her, and everything is going great. It's like a true Cinderella story until the powers that be, who work for his parents, find out about it and try to annul the marriage. Then he goes ghost, and she's left to deal with these handlers before his parents come. They have to find him so that they can try to get this marriage either annulled or get a handle on the situation. And what sets this apart from Sean Baker's previous movies, some of which we've discussed on the show before, is that this one plays, for the most part, purely comedic throughout. Realistic, but comedic. And so much so that watching the film, I was like, this is almost like The Nanny, the movie, you know? And then it starts hitting home around the third act where it gets a lot more dramatic and hitting home. And while this one is certainly a tragedy in of itself, it doesn't feel as horrible as some of the endings of his previous films. I can see why this film is getting such heavy praise, and I really enjoyed it. And I think Mikey Madison is great in the lead role, and definitely a step up from her getting murdered in so many movies in the same way that somehow involve fire. But I don't get the love of it as much as it's getting. I don't think it's like my number one movie of the year. I think it's a very good film. And strangely, while watching it, I felt like friend of the show, Aisha Wax, could have definitely played the lead role. No offense to Mikey Madison, but she would have walked away with the role too. But the film is just, it's weird that it's on that borderline of mainstream, but yet also indie in its sensibilities. And its final scene is truly fucking heartbreaking. But I also love that in the middle of the film, you don't know where it's going to go. And again, there's sometimes of like playful comedy, but then some realistic aspects. But I also really appreciated the side character. I think Igor is the character's name. His character just grows on you, and how effective he ends up becoming to the story, even though when he comes into the story, he's just hired help. But how essential he becomes to the film and basically the characters. So I'm going to say I highly recommend this film. I think a lot of people will like it. I think it's like this year's A Star is Born, one of those films everybody likes, and then it just like, because it's so kind of romantic and fantasy, but then it slaps you across the face and wakes you up at the end. And Andre, what did you think of Anora? And
I went into this movie very cold, only having seen, in terms of Sean Baker's filmography, Red Rocket, which we reviewed. So I think I had seen the trailers, but I didn't really get a grasp of what it was about. So when I saw the movie, right away, I think the thing that I was expecting was that once her character and the Russian kid got together, I'm waiting for that shoe to drop. Like things are going too good, right? She's getting paid to go over, have sex with them, and then it becomes more frequent. Then they go to Vegas and they get married. And at that point, I'm like, okay, this has to take some kind of dark and sinister turn. So when you bring in the Godfather with the two thugs, I'm thinking that's where it's going to lead. And the kid runs off. They're grabbing her to try to find him. But it doesn't play like that at all. In fact, like I said, the humor is very grounded in reality with all the absurdities that go on between going to the candy store and how that's handled in a way that's not violent, but just more ridiculous. When he gets his car towed, obviously the Godfather, and he like tries to literally get into the car, rips off the bumper. Like he is that obsessed. I said, this is like a real world T1000. He won't stop, but he is just clumsy as hell, and it's just hilarious to see. And yeah, the whole twist with the Igor character. I mean, there was a part of me deep down like, please don't have him get romantically involved. I don't see any sympathy with this guy, but once the Russian kid kind of comes back into play and you start to see, and it took me a while to even think about because I wrote about it in Collider recently, that at a certain point, even before all the chaos happens, you kind of know the hint that this is not going to work out between them. And I'm talking about right before Igor and the other dude come looking for the kid, when he's still playing video games. This is after they just got married, and she's trying to be affectionate and trying to be very wifey, and he's like kind of like, no, don't bother me, I'm playing my game kind of attitude. And that's what you kind of knew to set up that was going to pay off at the end, because obviously he runs off, he doesn't try to protect her, and then he's off at the strip club when they find him banging the competitor of her job that she doesn't like. And yeah, and then basically just giving in once the parents show up. Spoiler alert. What I came to the conclusion of, and why I think I really like this movie, is that this is essentially what the original version of Pretty Woman was supposed to be. Because Pretty Woman was not going to be like this happy Disney movie with the stripper getting with Richard Gere at the end. No, no, no. The original version of that film was very dark, very much like another Richard Gere movie, American Gigolo, and the relationship wasn't supposed to work out at the end. In fact, Julia Roberts is on drugs the whole time. He's using her, and then ultimately decides he's done with her and kicks her out the car. And it's supposed to be the sad but realistic ending. And this movie plays the realistic part all the way from beginning to end. There's no fantasy at by the time you get to the third act. So I think that's why it really resonates in so many different ways. You could talk about like it's very Me Too-ish, but no, I think there's a little more layers here with some very compelling characters that have some interesting twists, and they're grounded in a way that's relatable. And absolutely, our friend Asia would have totally knocked that out the park. No offense to Mikey Madison, but I think I could have seen her do this and really give it some weight. So yeah, this is not only a high recommendation from me. I think it's in my top 5 of the year.
Wow. I know it'll be in my top 10. I don't know if it's going to be in my top 5. But also, another thing in which you can tell you like a film and it's pretty strong is the one thing that Sean Baker has a talent with, which is he wants you want to know more about the side characters than just what's presented. Because I was thinking, like, I want to know her friend Lulu, get to know more about her. I want to know what's this living situation she's got with her sister, you know? And I think the difference, like, okay, this is again, in this fantasy scenario, as you were saying, if Aisha had played the role, I think it would have been interested dealing with someone who's older and knows better than to believe in the fantasy versus
Yeah.
with this film now, which is somebody younger yet street smart who actually wants to believe in the fantasy and then gets the rug pulled under her in so many ways. You know, it's like she should know better, but she still falls for it. But also, the one thing I like about this film is that no one is innocent in this film.
No.
Even our lead character, who we're supposed to have sympathy for, half the time she makes the situation worse with her comments or, you know, her language or her attitude, you know. And I appreciate that. I like flawed characters. You know, and it doesn't shy away. It's a Sean Baker film. It doesn't shy away from sex or nudity.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, but I also like that the sex almost becomes comedic after a while, more than, you know, more eroticized. You know, because like the way you were talking about the movie at first, it seems like it's going to be a 9.5 weeks Adrian Lynch movie, and then it ends up in this like kind of like screwball comedy of emotions. So I appreciate this film. Again, it's one of Sean Baker's most mainstream, least experimental films, even though essentially most of his films do kind of revolve around sex work, you know. And I even like that. I don't know the name of the actor, but the one who plays the Godfather really gets his time to shine in this film, just like he shined in the movie Tangerine and Prince of Broadway. And, you know, like even that scene where he literally is leaving a christening because he has to deal with this. And at first you think he's an actually religious figure. And it's like, oh no, he's just like, literally the Godfather. And I like we keep talking about him like he's an actual Godfather cop. You know, like, oh, the Godfather comes out. You know,
well, that's the hilarity of it too, is that you think these guys are legit thugs, and then you realize no, they're clumsy as hell.
Exactly. And I like the intercutting with real people. You know, like when they go to that club, that dance club for older people that Ivan had been to, and he's really asking customers who don't even know they're being filmed, oh, have you seen this guy? Have you seen Anton? Have you seen him? You know, just that intercut, you know, comedy, a little bit of that Borat type comedy there. But like I said, I give it a high recommendation. It'll probably be in my top 10. I don't see how it's like on some people's number ones though. But again, that's their taste. So, but definitely, we both highly recommend this movie. I think this is one of the next to Transformers 1, the film we like the most out of all the films we've reviewed this week. And with that, we have come to the year end actually, of Unfinished Business Television. Again, thank you folks for watching. Thank you for, you know, supporting us over the years at this point. And, you know, as always, you know, we have plenty of unfinished business to pertain to. So happy holidays. But I have to ask you, have you seen Better Watch Out? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. And Andre, what film would you recommend for the fine folks at home?
I recommend a movie that I think will uplift people's spirits if you're kind of down this Christmas. Have you seen Superman, the Christopher Reeve story? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome and it is inspiring.
And with that, we say happy 2025 and goodbye to 2024.
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.